Alright, so Battlefront 2 just became free last month on all PS Plus users, so you probably saw a lot of low levels and beginners in the game. This video would be the perfect guide if you're one of those beginners that want to be better at a certain hero like KYLO REN. So let's get straight to the point, and I'll start off with KYLO REN's base stats. So KYLO REN has a starting health of 750 HP and can regenerate up to 250 HP. Obviously, he only has 2 dashes, unlike Dooku and Rey. His sprint speed is around 8 meters per second, and he has a maximum jump height of 10 meters. KYLO REN has a saber damage of 125 per swing up front and a staggering 165 damage from behind when swinging the saber. He has the second strongest damage from behind, right next to Anakin's 180 damage. Next up is KYLO's 3 abilities. So his L1 ability is called Pull. It allows KYLO to pull enemies towards him and drops them to the ground so you can attack them while they're getting back up. This ability of his can be used mid-air, and I really do recommend that you use it mid-air because it's when your enemies will least expect it. This of course only works when the enemy is not blocking or when you're targeting a hero that can't block, like a blaster hero. His R1 ability is called Freeze, and it allows him to freeze his enemies for a certain amount of time. The enemies will continue to be immobilized until you damage them or the freeze effect runs out. Again, this only works if the enemy you're targeting is not blocking or is a blaster hero. Now his final ability, the L1R1 ability, is called Frenzy. This allows KYLO to sort of have an auto-target ability and makes him leap from enemy to enemy, damaging them 3 times with 115 damage per hit to heroes and 160 damage per hit to non-heroes, which is always a guaranteed insta-kill to at least 3 non-hero enemies. Now I'm not sure if this is a fact or I'm just really lucky, but it seems like every 3rd attack from the Frenzy is a guaranteed damage, even if the hero is blocking. So I'll show you a clip here of me hitting an enemy with a Frenzy, and even though he's blocking, the 3rd attack is a guaranteed hit. Let's move on to KYLO's star cards, which I have 3 that I personally use and that I recommend that you guys should use on your KYLO REN. So first is Closing In. Now this card allows KYLO to have a longer range when leaping to his enemies with his Frenzy. Now this card can be upgraded so that KYLO's regular 10 meter leaping ability can be turned into 14 meters at max. The second star card that I recommend is Power Reach. Now this card is for the pull ability, and it allows KYLO to have a longer range when pulling enemies, just like the previous card, which allows him to have a longer leaping ability. Now this card can be upgraded so that KYLO's regular 20 meter reach can now be turned to 26 meters at max. Now the final star card that I recommend is Harsh Pull. This adds damage to KYLO REN's pull, which could sometimes be useful if you're pulling enemies with low health, meaning that it would lead to an insta-kill. This card can be fully upgraded so that KYLO's original 10 damage when pulling can be turned to a staggering 60 damage at max.
Oh, that's a lot of damage!
Now, do take note that these cards are tailored to satisfy players that rely on reach with their star cards. There are also other combinations of star cards that are good as these, so let me know if you want a video about that. I will be making it specifically for KYLO REN star cards, so check that out soon. Now let's move on to some tips and tricks with KYLO REN. First is pretty easy to do, and it's combining your pull, freeze, and frenzy abilities to heavily damage an enemy. So like what I am showing here, I'm pulling my enemies towards me and I quickly turn behind me because that's where I anticipated them to land, and I instantly freeze them and frenzy them. Now this works very well because when the player gets unfrozen because you damage them, they start running, but they don't realize that they're leaving their backs wide open for an attack and could lead to an insta-kill. Another is that take advantage of maps that are elevated and have spots where players can be eliminated if they fall from it. For example, from the Naboo Palace Hangar, that spot inside is really big, but there are some areas where you can die from falling, and pulling enemies towards that direction would be a pretty good move because that would lead to an insta-kill, and sometimes you can pull multiple players, so it would lead to multiple kills. Another tip that I could give you is to be smart about using your pull and freeze abilities, because not many heroes can use their abilities mid-air. So if you think about it, your enemies would least expect it that you use your abilities mid-air. So yeah, that's another tip. Now do take note that KYLO is a pretty darn good villain because his abilities are good for crowd control and can be sometimes used for an insta-kill. KYLO is also a pretty good team player because his pull ability can help your teammates if you're getting cornered, so that the enemies would be thrown away from them and they could, regenerate their health. And another would be to freeze a couple of enemies and your teammates can jump in and attack multiple enemies at once and can do massive amounts of damage and can sometimes even win you games. So that about wraps it up for my updated hero guide for KYLO REN this 2020. Now don't forget to like and subscribe if you like my content, and be sure to leave a comment on which hero I should do a video on next. I will be leaving out a few clips of me doing a gameplay as KYLO REN so you guys can see how I play with him. I am a level 40 plus and I have purple star cards on my KYLO REN, so you can pretty much trust me that I am an experienced KYLO REN player. So yeah, thanks for watching.
The dark side continues to eclipse the light.
To reconsider your actions. Stay in formation.
Villainy carves a path toward victory.
Twist and fall.
Good is triumphing over ineptitude.
I've got a very bad The force is strong. The force is strong, but you are
Good
not.
gruesomely triumphs over evil.
Worthless.
You don't mean me any harm.
You insist on fighting?
Increase fatality reduction by 50% to achieve victory.
There is no passion.
You are nothing. Things out.
Boba Fett ends the round and prepares to build more services rendered.